Okay, so now you know how to use strings to display messages. Strings are used to store a piece of text, which you can think of as a sequence of characters, like letters, numbers, and symbols. In Python, we can create strings using single quotes, double quotes, or even triple quotes. Let's look at some examples. Now, look at what happens if I put another single quote in the middle of the string. This is not a valid string, and Python gets confused because it thinks this single quote represents the end of our string, so it doesn't recognize the rest of the characters after that. In this case, we can escape the quote inside using a backslash, like this. On the other hand, double quotes can handle words with a single quote or apostrophe inside, like it's or Joe's, with no problem. This makes double quotes more flexible and convenient. For really long strings with multiple lines, we can use triple quotes. For example, we could use a long string like this one in a treasure hunt game. By the way, we can also use strings to leave some comments about the code. Code comments are notes about our code to make it easier to read. They are not executed by the interpreter and are meant to be read by humans like yourself or others working on the code. We can write comments in our code using the hash symbol. Everything following this symbol until the end of the line is considered a comment. And you can also use triple quote strings to leave multi-line comments. These strings are not executed by the interpreter, so they are often used as comments. The reason we make a string by putting text inside quotes is to let Python know if a value is a number, a string, or something else. Now, let's see what happens if we try to do some math using strings. Did you know that dogs age faster than humans? Let's come up with a program that can calculate the age of our furry friends in human years. So let's create a variable and use it to save the user input when we ask for the dog age. Then we just multiply the dog's age by 7 to get the dog's age in human years. And finally, we print the dog's age in human years. Go ahead and run the code and then enter your dog's age in the terminal and check to see if we calculated correctly. But hey, that's not the correct answer. Where did we go wrong? The reason is that the input function always returns a string, meaning when you type 5, Python saves it as a string, not a number. And we can't do math with strings. Even though it might look like the only difference between them is that one has quotes around it, Python sees them as totally different things. Fortunately, Python has functions that can turn strings into numbers and numbers into strings. Let me show you. We can call the int function to convert the answer to a number just before it's multiplied by 7. The int function is short for integer. That is a whole number without a decimal place. And if you try to convert a number with a decimal point, also called floats, you'll get a value error. Here, Python is trying to tell us that the value we tried to convert wasn't appropriate. To fix this, we can use the function float instead of int, as the float can handle numbers that aren't integers. Also, anytime you use ints and floats together, Python will typically convert everything to a float value. Now we got it right, and we see the correct answer. Now just be careful when converting strings to numbers, because we can get a value error if we try to convert a string that doesn't contain a number in digits. Here, Python raises an error that indicates that the value is not a number. So we have seen how to use the print function to display values in our messages, and also how to combine or concatenate string values using the plus sign, but we can run into errors when mixing different types of values. So we can also convert a number to a string using the stir function to fix that. Now when we want to display a message like this using the contents of a variable, we can use a special string called an f-string, or formatted string. Knowing how to use f-strings will make your life as a programmer much easier. To create an f-string, simply add an f letter before the first quote of your string, like this. So in this string, we are using the curly braces around our variable names, which will be replaced with their actual value. So if you run this code, you'll see the actual values are shown. We can even put expressions inside our f-strings. For example, here Python evaluates the expression in the braces, and the printed string contains the result. But wait, there's more. In fact, Python strings have many more capabilities that we can use in our programs. So if you type the variable name and a dot, you can see all the capabilities available in a string value. These are basically functions that we can call just like the print or input functions. The difference is that the print and input functions are global functions. They don't belong to a particular type of value, but these functions are specific to a string. For example, you can use the method called upper to convert the string to uppercase. Now, let's print our string after calling the upper method. Notice the original string is not changed. This is because string methods don't change the value of the string. Instead, when we call the string method, a new string is created with the result. Python has a lot of methods to help us work with strings. Here are some of the most common ones for you. For more examples, check out the playground link in the description.